Okay, so as you know, I was a little worried about doing this one because, beloved as it is and popular as it is and as it's been for many years, like decades, this is not a property I was really familiar with at all, to be honest. About a week ago, when I decided to look into it a little bit in preparation for seeing this movie. Really, above all, so I would know what was going on. Because I just kind of had a feeling I might need to know a little something going in if I was going to really grasp what's in this movie. If not, the whole thing, because it started off as what, a manga series, and then there were a bunch of anime movies, there was like somewhat of a TV series, video games, just a whole damn world of this. So it was actually quite intimidating to go into all this. So obviously I can only do so much with so little time. So I was able to just kind of read about it and exactly what it was all about and kind of the mechanics of it. And I was able to check out the first movie, the 1995 movie, which proved something that I'm glad I did before going into this. Even though I'm sure I am a million miles away from the full picture, I just wanted to give myself a grasp on it before going into this. I'm sure the hardcore fans will still think I'm totally unqualified, but still, it's kind of a movie's job to stand on its own and also kind of bring in new people as well as pleasing the very large fan base. So I'll just kind of give you an idea based on that little tiny minuscule knowledge I had going in, how I felt about this movie. And, well, for starters, I do feel that it was, it's clear that it's like a Blade Runner thing they're going for. The city actually looked more like Blade Runner by way of Terry Gilliam. More specifically, Gilliam when he did like the Zero Theorem. And it was going to be in that kind of setting. And as far as bringing it to live action, starting as, well, talking movies, as anime, it was... I will say that another thing that's kind of troubling, if you're looking for me to say something extremely positive, that is, I don't hate it at all or anything, but anime is never really an area I ever found any passion for. It was just never really an area I was invested in, so I've never really grown to the attachment that some properties in anime have gotten. So that's kind of another thing that was going against me when I went into this. Honestly, one of the biggest factors is probably our crew. More specifically, our director is Rupert Sanders, who did Snow White and the Huntsman, and one of the writers is Aaron Kruger. It's usually... I mean, he has some movies that are underrated, but I mean, if you go look at his, his credentials, when you see Aaron Kruger's name on a script, you typically probably want to worry, at least a little bit. Not everything, but, probably most. And the thing that really seemed to grab me about this was how I was hearing about how that 1995 movie that I saw is considered, supposedly, like, one of the best anime movies out there. Like, you can tell, too, how much it inspired the Wachowskis, particularly when they did The Matrix, and when you look at it, probably Cloud Atlas, too, quite a bit. And the fact that it was just so incredibly highly regarded. There was definitely, I had hope, and I did really like that first movie. And, yeah, there's a surprise, like, I wasn't expecting there to be so much of that movie in this one, because it was to my understanding that they're very, like, they're a series, but they're not necessarily, like, direct sequels to one another. That's my understanding of it, anyway. And there is, we have our protagonist, who I do, there's a lot of interesting things about this character. Interesting backstory, the things that she can do, how she was created and put together, and where exactly she got into this. And the movie does, it takes its time, but it does eventually go into that. And it's nice that we do have a skilled actress in the role. And I'm not going to go into that whole whitewashing thing or anything, but I will say that knowing that she's really good, especially with this kind of material, um, Johansson's kind of left a little to be desired, I thought, as far as being our heroine here, because she's able to. I don't know. There's something quite that was even in the original movie that doesn't really come through here when she, because being a real life person and not an animated character leaves her a lot more room, you would think, to do something with this. But she's really just kind of I mean, you can probably say she's playing like a 98% cyborg. So maybe she'll come off a little, you know, emotionless or whatever. And but the thing about that is that she's already shown that she can do this with just her voice. If we think back to Her, where she was able to play artificial intelligence but make it a real character using only her voice, and now she's playing this more or less cyborg. And there's just something vacant, whether it's supposed to be that way or not. I feel like if it was supposed to be that way, that she's still a capable enough actress that she could have kind of brought something out of it. And something to kind of counter that is what Michael Pitt does when he shows up later in the movie, where it's the really interesting thing that Michael Pitt does here is that for what little he's in it, is he's able to emote, like he's able to really, you know, show something with his face and his eyes, while at the same time sounding like Microsoft Sam. And I thought that was really, he was really skillful how he approached that. And I thought that Johansson was kind of missing that kind of stuff throughout it, especially as more reveals happen as the movie goes on. So, as far as she was concerned, I was a little disappointed, but we can go on. There's a really impressive cast list here. Beat Takeshi is the like superior, who I cannot remember the last time I saw him in a movie. But it was like for a while there, I was thrilled because he's like second credited, so I thought he's going to be important, and he's just kind of, you know, that, you know, superior figure that's in most movies. But when we get to like the second half, he gets to be a total badass, and I really appreciated that. That he was able to break through and not just be that normal behind a desk superior character. And we also have one of her partners, the cop, the human cop, was Chen Hon, who, if he looks familiar and it didn't occur to you right away, he's Lau in The Dark Knight. So it was nice to see him pop up again. Michael Wincott, who I love, who was, you know, top dollar in The Crow, and, you know, a villain extraordinaire, most knownly for his voice, was in the opening scene. So I thought that was cool as well. So we do have a really strong cast here. Michael Pitt, as I was talking about, who's credited by his full name in the opening credits. I don't think he's gone by that before, but interesting choice. And it's, and I should mention here real quick, just as a tiny, tiny little nitpick while we're on the beginning credits. Yeah, typically, if you want to show promise from the get-go at the very start, to kind of show the audience that you have your shit together, that's kind of what an opening credit scene is for. If I was to do one thing that would show the audience that I'm going to show you something worthwhile, I'm going to show you something that says I really have a grasp on what I'm doing, the one thing I wouldn't do is show you the title twice. I know that's just a small nitpick, but I just found that a little bizarre. So, the opening credits had all kinds of, you know, question marks and warnings. It's like, why is, you know, Michael Pitt going by his full name? Why is Aaron Kruger a writer? Why am I seeing the title again? but it's okay. That none of that stuff matters. Um, but going on the original stuff, I do know, like, you know, with Logan and Deadpool, everybody has this R rating obsession now, and I don't want to come off like one of those guys because it's really blown out of proportion. But when you look back at the, I know I sound like a poser when I say original material, but I'm just going off the first movie. The first movie definitely had like R-rated material in it. Like when people got shot, their heads would explode, and you'd see like spinal cords and rib cages and all that. When you know she's in her, you know, when we see her body, it actually has, you know, like the qualities of nudity, and people are saying, you know, fuck every now and then. Um, that's one of those, this is one of those cases where I feel like it probably could have benefited if they stuck with that, because that kind of gave it this real, like, there's a whole kind of, the problem with this movie, if we're looking at the whole picture, is a real lack of, like, flair, and a sort of liveliness to it. Like, I know there's a lot of it in this, but I know there was a lot in the other one, too. There's a lot of, like, broodiness going on. So there seems to be kind of an intentional lack of, you know, flair and liveliness or whatever. But still, I do feel like in its animated form, it had a lot more of that this is kind of lacking. This is exactly what I talked about with Beauty and the Beast, how there are definitely cases where a live-action version can, you know, elevate it and make it great, but for the most part, there's something that animation can do where if you try to bring it over into live action, you're gonna lose a lot of magic a lot of the time. But there's still definitely, you know, there's surely room to do something, you know, creative and kind of show the audience something that they didn't see in the original that could still, you know, blow their minds or whatever. But this movie didn't really seem to look for that too much. You know, a big problem here, I think, is the fact that Sanders is the director, because he has shown with, you know, Snow White and the Huntsman and now this, that he seems more like a director that knows how to do trailer shots. Like, he goes into a movie saying, I know exactly what this movie's trailer is going to look like, and then it's like he doesn't know what to do with the rest of it. Because there is some really good stuff in here that I'm almost positive I didn't see the trailers, but I'm gonna guess they're probably in there. Like at the beginning when where it's like a semi recreation of the opening scene of the first movie, when she's going in where Michael Wincott is and she's invisible, and she goes through the glass, and as she's going through the glass, she comes back to visibility. Is a really cool shot, and the stuff like when she goes to do the deep dive and she gets hacked, how like the faceless black bodies are all grabbing her like a sea of them. I thought that some of the visuals are really, really good, but they're not consistently like that. For the most part, the movie actually feels surprisingly bland, especially during action scenes. Like, given this character's occupation, you would think it would have some kick-ass action scenes in it, but really none of them stand out, and the ones that somewhat kind of do are pretty much just exact recreations from that first movie. So there's so much there that's just left to be desired, and it feels like it's on the cusp of finding it, but we really never get there. And the material is in there too, like the whole plots where she's having, you know, it's an identity thing, and how like she's trying to get, you know, her memories back and all that. There's definitely material there to make it stronger and put it on an emotional level, but Sanders handles it just so blandly that it's really, this could have been a movie that really stood out from the other movies like it. There were always going to be comparisons to stuff like Blade Runner, obviously, but this movie felt like it was primed to be something that just visually and otherwise, because there's definitely emotional material in there to give it ground and not just be some visual extravaganza. There's definitely, like, there is a story and there is an emotional payoff to really give foundation to what we're looking at. It's all there, but it's just the director has no real intention of really, really pushing it or really, really going for it and giving us something really, truly spectacular. He almost handles it like he would, like, I would think anybody in the genre would have loved to have had this movie. And he comes off like a director for hire when you look at it. So I feel like that's really its biggest problem. And because of all this, this should be a movie that always kind of has your attention and something you can't take your eyes off of. If you're like me, your interest is going to go in and out frequently. Unless, you know, Beat Takeshi shows up and blows somebody away, or, you know, Michael Pitt comes in or something. You're just going to kind of go in and out, and you're going to see, oh, it's almost there. The movie is almost there, and then it just can't do it. So, yeah, overall, and like I said, I was kind of surprised by how much they used from the previous movie, where there are scenes that are pretty much grabbed directly but put in a semi-different... It's to my understanding that this is kind of a mesh of stories from the other stuff. But stuff that's clearly recognizable to me just from the first movie would be the stuff with the trash man and the scene on the boat and a lot of the climax. They do these little tweaks where they're recreating something from the other movie, but not in exactly the same way. Maybe something might be switched, or maybe something might be slightly different. And yeah, but still, you know, just recreating the scenes is not going to automatically make them as good. So it's not. I mean, it's nice that it's actually kind of nice that they tried to switch it up a little bit, even when they were making the same scenes. But it's just not there the way it was before. So that's pretty much what you can say about the movie as a whole. Like, it felt like it was handed to them on a silver platter, but they just could not do anything interesting with it. So, yes, I don't know how much that opinion is worth to you from somebody that's not fully and completely, you know, 100% in the world, but I tried. I really, really tried. So, as well as I could in the small time frame that I had. So that's how I felt about that. So yeah. Next, probably sometime in the week, I want to check out that new Robert Redford, Rooney Mara movie, The Discovery, that was just put on Netflix. Today is Friday when I'm shooting this, so today is when that came out. So you'll probably hear me talk about that in the next week or so, on top of whatever else there is. And obviously another Versus will happen. I don't know what that is yet, but I will. So, yeah, hopefully you like that Juno Perks of Being a Wallflower thing, and hopefully, you know, there's not too many fans of Life that are mad at me over that, but, so yeah, or this, to be honest. So, yeah, I tried. So if you're one of the really big fans and you really took to this in that way, don't hate me too much, because it's really this, unlike something like, well, no, I'm not going to say that because then I'll get in trouble, but yes, yeah, it could have delivered, but the people behind the camera and sometimes in front of it just weren't willing to go that extra mile for us. So if it worked for you, though, fantastic. I'm happy for you. So, yep, that's it. We're done.